We've got great pleasure to have the esteemed physician, Dr. Joel Fuhrman, here. He's on the board of directors of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and a director of research for the Nutritional Research Project of the National Health Association in the US. He's a board-certified family physician and a best-selling author. He specialises in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional methods and will now talk to us on how plant-based diets can prevent and even reverse some of the most prevalent chronic diseases. I think this is going to be another wonderful keynote speech, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, exciting to be here, and exciting that the World Preservation Foundation invited me for this event. And the theme of this presentation is that the diseases that afflict the modern world are preventable, and people do not have to have heart attacks. They don't have to have strokes. They don't have to be demented when they get older. And we can win the war on cancer. Nutritional science has advanced to the point today, especially in the last 20, 25 years, we actually have a complete new revolution in the history of nutrition, where we actually can find out what are the causes of these chronic conditions that afflict most of the modern world. And right now, these diseases of nutritional ignorance are overwhelming the healthcare systems all over the world, and not just affecting human tragedy, but laying down economic stress and putting the economies in trouble due to the growing amount of people that are overweight, diabetic, and with heart disease. So that is an introduction. Let's get started. I'm going to give you a basic understanding of the major concepts in human nutrition today, and that is food gives us macronutrients and micronutrients. And macronutrients are those nutrients that contain calories, fat, carbohydrate, and protein. And in the history of nutritional science, it's been proven, and I use the word proven in a scientific sense to mean reproducible in hundreds of different studies. It's been essentially proven that the less calories we consume and the reduction in calories can dramatically extend lifespan. That means that one of the most largest contributors to disease in the modern world is the excess consumption of calories. That's the excess consumption of fat, the excess consumption of carbohydrate, and the excess consumption of protein. Now, given that, we also require a certain amount of micronutrients. The micronutrients are those nutritional factors that do not contain calories. Those micronutrient factors that are calorie-free, like vitamins and minerals, and of course phytochemicals, which are a major part of the non-caloric load in food, critical for human health. In 1930, scientists discovered 14 vitamins and 16 minerals. And people thought, wow, this is great, right? We could prevent people from getting cancer. We can have people be healthier and live longer. But it didn't work out that way. By 1935, the vitamin supplement industry was already a billion-dollar industry. They were already adding thiamine and riboflavin and other factors to processed foods like Cocoa Puffs. People were taking vitamin pills. Between 1935 and 2005, during that 70-year stretch, cancer rates went up for 70 years in a row, unabated, and accompanied by a dramatic increase in obesity and autoimmune conditions, and of course heart disease and diabetes. But the most striking and fascinating event was the incredible epidemic and explosion of cancer rates all over the world since, we could say, the micronutrient revolution. And it wasn't until about 20 years ago where scientists first recognized that vitamins and minerals were not the major micronutrient load that was in food, that phytonutrients were, or phytochemicals were. What I'm saying here now is that this third class of newly discovered micronutrients, now called phytochemicals, overwhelm vitamins and minerals. And they're where all the science is at lately, because we're actually finding out that these antioxidants and these newly discovered phytonutrients have a broad spectrum of effects on the human immune system and the ability to repair broken DNA crosslinks that could lead to cancer and prevent cells from being damaged by cancer-causing agents. In other words, we're designed to function on a full spectrum of nutrients that are found in whole natural foods. When we process foods, we destroy those delicate nutrients that are in natural foods. And we don't get them, and our bodies can't function normally, laying ourselves exposed to diseases that are now afflicting the modern world. So keep in mind the simple health equation, H equals N over C, means a person's health, their healthy life expectancy. And the word healthy life expectancy, as defined by the World Health Organization, is not just how long you're going to live, but the quality of your life in the last 10 or 15 years of life, whether you have your full mental faculties intact, right? Whether you are in pain, undergoing uncomfortable medical procedures, whether you have your full physical abilities. In other words, you want to live your life not just longer, but better, with better enjoyment and with pleasure. And that H, that healthy life expectancy score, is affected most by the micronutrient per calorie density of your diet. That means, are you getting the micronutrients you need in the fewest amount of calories? Are you getting the micronutrients you need to have a normal immune system so you don't get cancer, so you don't get demented, and so you don't develop heart disease or have a stroke? So what I'm saying here to start out is that your health is dependent on the micronutrient bang per caloric buck. You have to eat less calories, but you have to make sure when you do so, you achieve micronutrient adequacy, especially the adequacy of antioxidants and phytochemicals. To do that, you have to eat more foods that are higher in micronutrients and less foods that are low in micronutrients, right? You have to eat a diet with micronutrient adequacy. You have to eat the right foods. Now look at the way the UK is eating. It's not much different than the way they're eating in the United States today. Actually, in the UK, I think it says they're eating 58% of calories from processed foods today. That may have been 10% 100 years ago. Now it's 58%. The processed foods are things like white flour products, like cupcakes and bagels and crackers and cookies and pretzels and soft drinks and processed foods and bars and rice cakes and breakfast cereals, oils and sugars. In other words, we're living on foods that have no nutrients, that have no antioxidants. And then in America, that percent is up to 63% already of a percent of total caloric intake. Just 10 years ago, it was below 50%. Now, the animal product intake in the UK is even greater than in America, because that's 26% in America, it's 27.5% in the UK today. But here's the thing. I'm saying that an animal product, like chicken or meat, is just like a bagel or a piece of white bread. Why am I saying that? Why am I saying a piece of chicken is like a piece of white bread? How come? Anybody know? Because they both don't contain many micronutrients. They're both grossly deficient in micronutrients, and neither one has phytochemicals. Let me say that one more time, okay? Because what I'm saying here is that a strawberry doesn't have 31 nutrients. A strawberry has over 700 different nutrients. A piece of broccoli has over 1,000 important nutrients for your health, right? But processed foods do not contain those antioxidant vitamins and minerals, like vitamin C and vitamin E and vitamin K and the carotenoid family, like lutein and lycopene and cryptoxanthine. And the lignins and the bioflavonoids and the phytochemicals that prevent cancer are not found in processed foods. And you know what? They're not in animal products either. These plant-derived nutrients that we're finding in modern science that give us the ability to control our health destiny, they're giving us the ability to have a unique and unprecedented opportunity in human history to live longer and better than ever before in the history of the human race. But we have to take advantage of this recent science. Years ago, we thought nutritional science just meant taking some vitamin C so we didn't get scurvy, or vitamin D so we didn't get rickets. If we tried to figure out what things we were missing would create deficiencies. And now nutritional science has advanced to a completely different realm. Now we're finding out what nutrients we should consume, not just to prevent disease, but to extend human life and to prevent the development of the diseases of aging that people are suffering from. So in the UK, this is showing that the produce consumption is about 11% comes from natural, unrefined plant foods, and about half of that is white potato. And white potato, including consumed as French fries and chips and mashed potatoes. In other words, white potato is the lowest micronutrient density of any vegetable. And if we remove that, the rest of the nuts and the seeds and the beans and the mushrooms and the onions and the green vegetables and sweet potatoes, all the other fresh fruits and all the other natural plant foods would be less than 5% of total intake in the UK and in America. Now, 100 years ago, to say that we could win the war on heart disease, to say to you, how much is that worth to you if you don't ever have to have a heart attack or a stroke or get demented? Is that worth £1 million? Is that worth 10 million? But the point here is this is an opportunity that everyone has to avail themselves of, right? That you all have to take advantage of. And this is not something radical to think that people can protect themselves against these diseases that afflict almost all people in the modern world. If we saw 100 years ago, right? 100 years ago, these diseases hardly even existed. Early man did not get cancer. That's a recent disease. They actually do studies on mummies and people who were unearthed, that died thousands of years ago. There were none of these diseases that afflict people today. So it's not a big stretch here to say that people don't have to have heart disease. And we're finding out when we apply modern nutritional science to give people diets that are very micronutrient rich, their weight melts away, the fat on their body melts away, and their heart disease and diabetes and high blood pressure and high cholesterol go away as well. If they were having chest pains, if they have blockages in their heart, they don't have to have angioplasty and bypass surgery. They can be free of pain in a few months just from adopting a diet of nutritional excellence. 100 years ago in America, less than 4% of the population died of heart attacks, which is now close to 40%. And even in the UK today, more than 50% of the population is dying of heart attacks and strokes and these diseases of nutritional ignorance. And more people are dying of these diseases of nutritional excess compared to people that are starving from not enough calories. So you can just look at this slide, the prevalence of diabetes worldwide and how it's exploding. And it doesn't have to be. We're eating too many calories, and fat is a biological living mass that produces hormones that accelerates the rate at which heart disease develops and increases your risk of cancer. Fat on the body is dangerous. And one of the themes of this presentation right now is that the micronutrient deficits from eating processed foods and animal products with the insufficient consumption of plant-derived phytonutrients from natural whole plant foods drives overeating behavior. Let me say that one more time. I'm claiming here that the lack of proper micronutrients by multiple mechanisms fuels the body's cravings, addictions, and drive to increase its caloric intake, leading to the obesity epidemic. So as we eat more foods that are rich in micronutrients, we automatically and naturally desire less food. So we're talking about people requiring less and desiring less as a means of controlling their health and their weight. And that when you choose to eat a diet of predominantly processed foods and animal products, you desire more, and you often can't control your desire to overconsume calories because you feel ill if you don't overconsume calories, because that's what the word addiction means. Addiction means that you feel okay when you're doing it, but you try to stop it, and you feel uncomfortable or get pain. You might get shaky, weakness, headaches, confusion, fatigue, stomach cramping, but you feel ill unless you keep eating. So we're going to discuss that briefly, okay? So the cost of dietary-related disease in the UK alone is predicted to be over £19 billion over the next 10 years. And all this money is potentially saved, obviously, by the healthcare system. So 7 out of 10 deaths now are caused by chronic diseases directly related to what people eat. Now, we can group both heart disease and cancer together because it's not one diet that causes heart disease and strokes and another diet that causes cancer. The same diet that leads to the reversal and protection from heart attacks and strokes is the same diet that will prevent people from getting cancer, right? And we know that if we look at a lot of the studies, we're finding out when you're having the food served to you, all the cupcakes and all the white flour and sugar you're eating, those just aren't micronutrient deficient. They cause the body to build up toxic waste products like free radicals, like advanced glycation end products. You're eating foods that cause obesity, diabetes, and cancer. You're eating yourself on the way to a shortened lifespan. We have to recognize that the proper diet here to prevent disease has to be rich in natural plant foods, and we have to understand plant foods give us the most protection, right? So we're talking here about eating a diet rich in natural foods, and vegetables, of course, afford the most protection. And the foods that are highest in micronutrients, of course, are green vegetables, right? So what's the food that's most powerfully linked to the protection against heart disease? In other words, what's the food that you would eat the most of to reverse and protect yourself from heart disease? And the answer is green vegetables. The foods would have the highest micronutrient per calorie density. What's the food that would offer you the most protection against cancer of all foods? And the answer is green vegetables, right? The foods that mostly the primates eat. If you followed a primate like a monkey around in the woods with a telephoto lens, looking for everything they ate for the month, and scientists do that, go back to the laboratory and calculate exactly what they eat, they find they consume 15 times as much of the micronutrients compared to the RDIs that Americans and people are not consuming and are not even meeting those basic requirements set by governments. We're not even meeting those requirements, anywhere near meeting them. Yet the wild animals in the woods consume 10 to 20 times that much because their diet is so rich in these very high phytonutrient green vegetables. And of course, we're talking here about the power of seeds and berries and mushrooms and onions to have factors that actually prevent the expression of the gene defects that could lead to cancer. when you have a diet rich in mushrooms and onions and green vegetables, those gene defects that may increase the risk of breast cancer or colon cancer or prostate cancer are suppressed by the high intake of the phytochemicals. The human body has been designed in a manner to protect itself against these diseases. It already has the right mechanisms. We are a miraculous, self-healing, self-protecting machine designed to live essentially from birth to an uneventful death. And we could live 15 to 25 years longer than we're living today by putting into action these advances in modern nutritional science. One advance here, again, is the fact that seeds and nuts protect against sudden cardiac death. Most people consume 400 calories a day from oil. Now, I'm saying here that walnut oil is not the same thing as a walnut, and almond oil is not the same thing as an almond. When you eat the whole food, when you get your fat from the whole food, like nuts or seeds, it has marked effects to stabilize the heart against irregular heartbeats, as opposed to gaining weight with oil, because that 120 calories a tablespoon gets absorbed very rapidly and stored away in the body as fat. When you take the fat from a whole food, like an almond or a walnut or a sesame seed, all those calories aren't biologically available. The sterols and stanols, like a sponge, bind the fat in the stool so it's excreted, and it actually sucks some of those negative fats, like LDL cholesterol, out of the body from the bloodstream back into the digestive tract for removal in the stool. We're saying here that nuts and seeds actually help prevent and reverse diabetes and help prevent and reverse heart disease and have beneficial effects on both morbidity and mortality. So one key element here is getting less fat from processed food and more fat from whole natural plant foods like seeds and nuts. Now, one of the recent findings in the modern nutritional science is that we shouldn't eat excess macronutrients like fat, carbohydrate, and protein, right? But one of the most critical nutrients to focus on here is protein, because we've been brainwashed or educated with wrong information. For some people, they kind of thought that protein was to be held in such high esteem because it facilitates growth and promotes growth hormone, right? But now we're finding that the more growth hormone, and especially IGF-1, the insulin-like growth hormone that's produced by the excess consumption of animal protein, is one of the primary factors leading to the tremendous increase in risk in breast cancers and prostate cancers and colon cancer. In order for people to maximize their opportunity for longevity, we have to make sure they don't consume too much of high biological protein, because the more high biological protein you eat, the higher your insulin-like growth factor 1 will be, and the stronger the risk of breast cancer and colon cancer. And it's this factor alone that accounts for some of these major explosion in the rates of breast cancer and prostate cancer in the last 50 years in modern countries. Because protein was brainwashed or advertised to us as being a favorable nutrient, and we thought it represented wealth and health, and we tried to consume more of it, and we've wound up causing an epidemic of cancer because of it. So animal protein raises cholesterol, and plant protein lowers cholesterol, right? Animal protein promotes cancer, and plant protein, of course, reduces the risk of cancer. And also, when you get your protein from plants, especially green plants that are largely protein, right? Then you're getting a high package of high antioxidants and phytochemicals and fibers that are so protective against disease. The ANDI scores, the word ANDI stands for Aggregate Nutrient Density Index, is a tool to help direct people to easily recognize what foods have the most micronutrients. So all I did here to devise the ANDI scores was to add up 23 nutrients that are well studied, right? Nutrients like vitamin E, vitamin C, selenium, zinc, B12, right? Folate. We took the 23 nutrients and we added them up to give each food one number so people could easily see one number instead of 23 different numbers to get an overall feel, right, for how much micronutrients they contain. And the nice thing here about the ANDI scores is that the foods that are rated highest in the measurable micronutrients, because don't forget there are thousands of unmeasurable micronutrients. We can't measure all of them. But the foods that are highest in these measurable micronutrients are also the highest in the ones we can't measure as well. Now, of course, it shows that, comparing white pasta and white bread to a vegetable, it's not, the vegetables aren't 10 times as much nutrients, they're 100 times as much nutrients, right? And you can see that animal products and processed foods are relatively low, and I think that's the main focus here of the ANDI scores, and the main benefits are to show and demonstrate how powerful vegetables are at earning people the micronutrients they need to fuel not just adequate health, but excellent health, right? And the ANDI facts, these are the 23 parameters which the ANDI scores measure. so we can help direct people to make better food choices. Now, putting together a food pyramid for nutritional excellence, and I call it a nutritarian diet or nutritarian food pyramid. I coined that word nutritarian to help people distinguish the type of food they're going to be trying to strive to eat. I'm claiming here that it's not just the explosion of animal products, though that's a big part of it, but it's also the tremendous explosion of processed foods that comprise such a large percent of modern diets that is accountable and resulting in this epidemic of chronic disease we see in the modern world. So if we're going to make a pyramid for people who want excellent health, what should we put at the base of the pyramid? Shouldn't we put the foods that have the best association with long life? Shouldn't we put the foods at the base of the pyramid we want people to do the most of? The foods that have the most micronutrients in them? And so therefore, what happens when you design a pyramid and when you put vegetables at the base? Fruits and beans, nuts and seeds, whole grains, and we restrict the amount of processed foods, and we restrict the amount of animal products to very small amounts in the diet, or not at all. We see then miraculous things happen to people. We see people lose weight and get their health back. After people have suffered for 20, 30 years with diseases, they adopt this type of diet and they stop desiring excess calories and they lose weight almost effortlessly, right? So let me describe for you for a minute how this works and how it prevents the drive to overeat. The human body cycles between anabolic phases and catabolic phases, right? Anabolic and catabolic. Anabolic means you're building your body up. Catabolic means you're breaking it down, right? In the anabolic phase, you're eating and digesting, right? In the catabolic phase, you're living off of what you stored when you ate. Like you went to the gas station and filled up your tank, and now you're driving it around, you're burning up the tank. Well, in the catabolic phase, you're burning that glucose and burning off those fats that you stored when you ate and absorbed it, okay? Now, what happens, though, is that when you eat a diet low in nutrients, you build up certain toxic waste product in your body, like free radicals, like advanced glycation end products. You build up toxic waste products because you're not taking in the phytochemicals and antioxidants you need for normal function. And then when you stop digesting and you enter the catabolic phase, when you finish digesting a meal, your body starts to go into an enhanced stage of repair and self-cleaning and detoxification. And if your diet was unhealthy, if you're eating a diet like most of the modern world is eating today, with lots of processed foods and lots of animal products, you're going to have lots of nitrogenous wastes and lots of free radicals and lots of toxins build up in your tissues. And when you try not to eat and you go into the catabolic phase, you're not going to feel well. You're going to feel shaky and weak, confused and fatigued, and you're going to have to eat again. You're forced to eat more food than your body requires. If you ate a healthy diet and you were well nourished with micronutrients and you went to the catabolic phase, you would feel nothing. You wouldn't even feel like eating. I'm making a tremendous claim here. I'm saying most people cycle from anabolic phase to anabolic phase. And if they finish digesting, they want to eat again. They want to have a snack. They want to have another meal. They want to put something in their mouth. They want to have some, right? They can't stop eating. They've lost their connectivity. Their natural instinctive drives that tells them the amount of calories they need to eat to maintain a lean body mass are lost because they become food addicts because of lack of micronutrient quality in their diet. I'm saying the lack of micronutrient quality drives addictive sensations to overeat, that when you see the curve goes down, that glucose curve drops, and you enter that catabolic phase, you get what I call toxic hunger, the need to eat again. And most people that become overweight, they become overweight because they don't feel well unless they almost constantly consume calories to prevent the detoxification. It's as if they were trying to stop drinking 10 cups of coffee a day or trying to get off cocaine because they feel too uncomfortable if they try to stop eating or don't overconsume calories. They can solve the sensation of toxic hunger by either eating too frequently or eating a big heavy meal with too many calories to keep the digestive tract busy in the anabolic phase until it's time for their next meal. A healthy person, though, doesn't feel the detoxification stress. Most of you sitting here in the audience today, whether if you could have even skipped lunch, if you're eating a healthy diet, you would feel nothing. You wouldn't have to overeat food. Your body actually develops more metabolic efficiency when you eat a diet rich in micronutrients, and you can maintain your lean body mass with less calories. It enables people to eat less and not feel hungry. And then when the glycogen is burnt off and you've gone through your catabolic phase, before you would burn lean body mass, your body would get a clear signal to eat that I call true hunger. And true hunger is mostly felt in the throat and the mouth, and it's accompanied by dramatic enhancements in taste. So true hunger, marked at the end of the catabolic phase, directs people to the exact amount of calories they require to maintain a long, healthy life and to keep their stable weight for their whole life without gaining weight or losing weight. It helps protect your lean body mass, but here's the point. You can't become overweight. You can't get fat on your body unless you have eaten outside of the demands of true hunger. In order to gain weight, you had to have eaten recreationally or because of the demands of toxic hunger or addictive. And also, there's a feedback loop to the brain that signals the brain to increase the desire to consume more calories when you're not meeting your micronutrient needs. So, what if society learned about modern nutritional science? And what if 50 to 80% of our population, of our elderly population over the age of 60, didn't have to go on medications for diabetes and high blood pressure and cholesterol lowering, right? The prescription pads are like permission slips. We've evolved into a society where the medication takes the place of teaching people how to live in a healthy manner, right? And by the medication lowering their blood pressure, lowering their blood sugar, and lowering their cholesterol, people have resolved of all personal responsibility to take care of their health. And inevitably, they follow the same diet that caused the problem to begin with, so the disease process inevitably advances until they die a premature death, right? So what if there were a way to lower cholesterol and drop blood pressure and prevent heart disease that was more effective than taking medications? What if people actually wanted this knowledge and information so they wouldn't have to have happen to them what maybe happened to their father or to their neighbor, right? What if you could actually not just control diabetes, but if you could reverse it and make the diabetic non-diabetic without the cost of drugs and without the tragic consequences of diabetes that lead to amputation and blindness and kidney damage and heart disease? What if you could avoid angioplasty and bypass surgery, which the meta-analysis show do not extend lifespan anyway, right? Angioplasty and bypass surgery, which could relieve chest pain, find that years down the road, these people who undergo those procedures don't have less chest pain than people who weren't treated with those interventions. And they don't live longer either. They're just temporizing measures. But what if you can reverse that disease and get the person out of pain and back to a normal functioning life again without these futile and expensive medical procedures? And of course, that's what we see happens, not just in one case, but in thousands of cases. And in my presentation later on this afternoon, I'll describe a lot of those cases. But in this presentation, I want to highlight one. Ronnie suffered about 5 years ago with bypass surgery due to crushing chest pain, and he weighed over 300 pounds. In 4 years' time, the bypass failed, and he had chest pains again, and he couldn't even walk 1 block. He was rushed back to the hospital, and they put stents in, 3 angioplasty stents in his heart. Within a month, his stents had restenosed, and he was back having chest pains again. On more than $600 of out-of-pocket medical expenses a month, and 3 medications to lower his blood pressure, which couldn't get his blood pressure down, and 3 medications to lower his cholesterol, which couldn't get his cholesterol down adequately, and medications to reduce chest pain that still didn't enable him to walk. He was literally sent home to die. I never met Ronnie, but through the internet, he found my work, he read my information, he communicated, and he got educated as to how he could reverse his heart disease. He lost 140 pounds in 12 months, but the story here isn't the weight he lost. The story is that Ronnie doesn't have high blood pressure anymore, and he's on no medication. He doesn't have high cholesterol anymore. His LDL cholesterol is 60 on no medication. Well, his total cholesterol is 230 on 3 cholesterol-lowering drugs. He doesn't have chest pain anymore. He plays tennis, he runs, he works out, he has a full life. He's not sick anymore. He doesn't have heart disease anymore. It melted away. Nutritional excellence does what medical interventions doesn't have the power to do. My mission here, of course, is to let people know that they have an option, that they don't have to have happen to them what happens to Ronnie Valentine, right? And Ronnie said, I wouldn't want anyone to go through what I had to go through in my life, right, before he learned this information about good nutrition. To study this high micronutrient diet, we call it a high nutrient density diet. In the medical literature, obviously, published in the medical journal Metabolism, it showed that this plant-based high nutrient diet lowered LDL cholesterol 33%, which is more powerful than medications. But when you lower it with nutritional excellence, you don't get the same effects of lowering cholesterol with a drug, because your cholesterol level is just one of many factors that create heart disease. It's not the only factor, it's not even the most powerful factor. When you lower your cholesterol through excellent nutrition, you drop your body weight down. You get the fat off your body. You perfuse your body with nutrients that have anti-inflammatory effects. And when you perfuse your body with those nutrients, it activates systems like the NRF2 system in the blood vessels, to protect plaque from building up and actually to accelerate the reversal of heart disease. The nutrients have beneficial effects, and it lowers your blood pressure, of course, too, but then these micronutrients have beneficial effects way and above, outside of what can be accomplished by cholesterol-lowering medications. Because you can't equate the degree of protection you get, because if you really want to take me up on that promise, that guarantee not to have a heart attack or a stroke, it's not good enough to lower your blood pressure with drugs. You have to lower your blood pressure with good nutrition because you earned it. You have to be physically fit. You can't be overweight. And you have to have a good cholesterol that's not forced down with drugs. You have to have earned it through excellent nutrition. That's how you get the 100 degree of protection. Drugs and medications don't give you that degree of protection that nutritional excellence can, that Ronnie Valentine earned, of course. So heart disease, high blood pressure, and even diabetes are diseases that are preventable and reversible, right? Nutritional studies, population studies, epidemiologic studies, right? All support the effectiveness of a healthy plant-based diet to arrest, prevent, and reverse diseases like heart disease. And I've been in practice more than 20 years, treating hundreds and hundreds of patients, not just with diseases of high blood pressure and high cholesterol, but people who had high blood pressure and high cholesterol with advanced heart disease, people who had chest pain, people who were told they needed to have urgent bypass surgery or urgent angioplasty, who instead chose the nutritional approach. And within months, their pains melt away as they lose weight, as they eat healthy. Right? In the same amount of time, this person could have been evaluated with a stress test, with the angiogram or catheterization, and then go through bypass and rehab after that expensive and invasive procedures. In that same amount of time, a few months later, the people are already feeling better, and their chest pains are going away, and they're well without those invasive and expensive procedures. So nobody needs to die of a heart attack. You don't have to have strokes. Dr. Esselstyn, a very renowned physician in the United States, did a series where he followed over 50 people for 17 years, and he followed these individuals who had very advanced heart disease. They weren't just regular people with high blood pressure. These were people who had heart attacks, who had blockages, and he followed them for 17 years, who followed an excellent plant-based diet, and he found that in this group, these people didn't have future heart attacks. Likewise, a similar group of people followed for the same amount of years had multiple cardiac events, emergency room visits, expensive medical care, going back to repeat surgeries and interventions. Likewise, Dr. Ornish's work showed the same thing, that as these studies are done, we find that heart disease is not only preventable, but it's reversible. And it's reversible to the extent that you use modern nutritional science to have the most optimal diet style possible. And if you have a disease like diabetes or heart disease or high blood pressure, my question to you is, how excellent is your diet? Are you taking advantage of modern nutritional science to do everything you can? Or are you just relying on popping a pill as your disease is likely going to continue to worsen? A nutritarian's diet is vegetable-based, not grain-based, not based on oil and white flour. It's based on, of course, green vegetables, mushrooms, onions, lots of fruits, beans, seeds, nuts. Oil is used sparingly. Animal products could be done in a vegan diet or one you use very tiny amounts like a condiment. But the animal products have to be dropped down dramatically to get the full benefits and lifespan advantages that are available to people today. It's focused on nutrient-dense calories. And the question is, our best minds, our best chefs, can we make nutrient-rich food taste fantastic? Can we make eating pleasurable, more pleasurable, and protect our health at the same time? Why not, right? Why not have great taste, great fun, and great health together? Why not take advantage and have the best health possible, right? Well, it seems as if people, they're so addicted, they're so afraid of food being taken away from them, that they'll shovel things in, processed meats, barbecued, luncheon meats, fried foods, white flour products, sugar, cupcakes, donuts, crackers, any kind of thing in their mouth, regardless of the effect on its health. The most important knowledge that people could have to control their personal health destiny, more important than wealth, is your health. What good is wealth if you don't have your health? And the fountain of youth, of course, is eating a plant-based diet containing high micronutrient-containing foods, vegetables, beans, mushrooms, onions. You know, what if there was a medical study that showed that women who ate mushrooms on a daily basis had over 60% lower risk of breast cancer? What if there was such a study? Wouldn't women be running out to eat mushrooms? Shouldn't that be on the front page of the New York Times? What if there was a study that showed that people who ate onions on a regular basis had a 50 to 80% lower risk of cancers? Wouldn't people be putting onions all over their foods every day? What if there was a pill from a drug company that can do that? Wouldn't that drug company be making billions of dollars? Every person would be paying £1,000 a month to consume those pills to prevent cancer? What if there was a study that showed people who ate green cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and bok choy and kale had dramatically low rates of cancer, even better than mushrooms and onions? Well, these studies exist. These studies are true, right? We have the evidence right now that natural plant foods have dramatic and powerful effect to afford people a unique opportunity to win the war on cancer and to win the war on the chronic diseases that afflict the modern world, that afflict the world today, all right? So we're talking here about grossly limiting significant limitations on eating foods that are detrimental to our health. The point here is that we have to change the way we see food, and we have to recognize that natural foods, whole natural foods grown by the earth, already have been designed with the perfect substances to fuel human species with the ability to live a long, protective, and disease-free life. So I'm offering you that opportunity. Thank you.
And Joel will be speaking again later this afternoon. And Joel just referred to Caldwell Esselstyn in his talk. Dr. Esselstyn made medical history by going to cardiovascular surgeons and gathering up a group of men for whom medical science could offer no solutions. They went through 5 years of a vegetarian diet, followed by 15 years of a vegan diet. During and since that time, not one of the men has had any heart problems. Now, Dr. Esselstyn can't be with us today, but he has sent over a video message, which we're going to play.
My name is Caldwell B. Esselstyn, Jr., and I welcome this opportunity to share my research and some of my thoughts on heart disease with this global warming conference. It's interesting that coronary artery heart disease is the leading killer of women and men in Western civilization. However, even today, if we were to look at certain cultures, like the rural Chinese, the Papua Highlanders in New Guinea, Central Africa, the Tarahumara Indians in northern Mexico, coronary artery disease is virtually non-existent. These are plant-based cultures. And if the truth were known, coronary artery heart disease, which wreaks such havoc, is nothing more than a toothless paper tiger that need never, ever exist. And if it does exist, it need never, ever progress. Now, the question that remains is, can people who are living in a Western society where there is rampant cardiovascular disease, are those persons who have cardiovascular disease willing to commit to a type of plant-based culture or plant-based nutrition? And if they do commit to this plant-based nutrition, can it halt or reverse their disease? Well, there's a very, very powerful example, sort of from a historical standpoint. If we were to look at what happened in World War II in Norway, it was characteristic of the conquering Axis powers that when they overran Holland and Belgium and occupied Denmark and Norway, that they would take away their livestock for the troops. They would take away their cattle, their horses, their pigs, their chickens, their turkeys, and so forth. And it was interesting that if we looked at deaths from cardiovascular disease in Norway in 1927, going up, 1930, going up, 1935, going up, 1939, away goes the meat and the dairy, and down suddenly. Time of greatest personal stress. Deaths from heart attack and stroke are plummeting right through 1945, when with the cessation of hostilities, there was a resumption of meat and dairy, and immediately we again had an increase in deaths from circulatory diseases, heart attack and stroke. I'd also like to try to share with you a patient with coronary artery disease. This was a young 44-year-old physician, and when he had his heart attack, I think you can see his angiogram here clearly shows where the artery is so diseased and narrowed. And he also was rather wary. This was in 1996. He was rather wary about taking any statin drugs. And I said, fine, let's just be sure that you eat totally plant-based. And he did. He was totally committed. And about 30 months later, he had another angiogram. And sure enough, as you can see, it went from this diseased, narrowed artery in 1996 to this one, which is now fully wide open. Again, demonstrating proof of concept, because he had been reticent to take any cholesterol-lowering drugs, that what was responsible for reversing his illness was his willingness to totally partake of plant-based nutrition. This has been certainly confirmed multiple times over the last 20 years. And I think the literature is really quite solid on the fact that I think it is time that physicians really grasp the concept and the idea that plant-based nutrition can accomplish some really almost miraculous type of goals with patients with significant cardiovascular disease. Well, we have now got an experience with well over 250 patients that indeed I find that patients rejoice when they are fully educated about what has been the causation of their illness and what they can do to absolutely turn it around and reverse it. I think it's important for us, in order to make this happen, to give a great deal of respect to patients. And it may take me upwards of 4 or 5 hours in a single setting with a group of patients who have the disease to have them have this seminar of counseling which achieves these goals. Now, I don't expect this to be the responsibility of the cardiologist or the treating physician, because they will not have this kind of time in their practice. But I think we are at a time where this disease is so significant and the treatment of it is so powerful when it is plant-based nutrition that we are going to have to develop apprenticeships where either nurse practitioners or physicians who have this passion, who have this skill set, are willing to commit to show patients how to do this. Because the answer to this disease has certainly not been a pill. It's not been a procedure. The stents and the coronary bypass surgery just don't get the job done. I mean, even those who do these procedures recognize that they are but stopgap patch jobs. If we're going to end the disease, we have to actually treat the causation of the illness. This is a foodborne illness, and it can be stopped. But there's even a bigger message beyond the mere treatment of coronary artery disease, because if we look at these common chronic killing diseases, I think one can make a very strong argument. Do we have multiple common chronic killing diseases, or do we have one that has multiple manifestations? For example, suppose I start treating a patient who is 250 pounds, definitely overweight, who's had a heart attack. He is obese, or she is obese, diabetic, hypertensive, and interestingly enough, they just get it, and they get it right. So now let's say it's 9 or 10 months later, and they don't weigh 250 pounds. They now weigh 175 or 180 pounds. They're no longer obese. They're no longer hypertensive. They don't have any more high blood pressure. Their diabetes has resolved. Their risk of a future heart attack and stroke are gone. And also markedly diminished is the likelihood that they'll have one of the common Western cancers of breast, prostate, colon, and pancreas. And also the likelihood of their having gallstones, diverticulitis, osteoporosis, asthma, allergies. So many things are tied up with what could be this tremendous seismic revolution in health that will never come from a pill or a procedure. But it will come when we in the medical profession are willing to have the grit and the determination, the patience and understanding to try to show patients what is the optimal lifestyle that they can follow. Finally, may I say to the Conference on Global Warming, I wish you every success. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to participate. I'm also confident that the more persons that we have who are willing to participate in the health benefits of plant-based nutrition, will go a long ways towards helping with your goals. Thank you.
Is our food supply putting global health at risk? Dr. Michael Greger, a physician, is probably one of the best qualified in the world to answer this question. He's a Director of Public Health at the Humane Society of the US. He was the author of Bird Flu, a virus of our own hatching, and is an internationally known lecturer. Dr. Greger, who is not here, has, however, sent a video message to talk about some of the health threats we're currently unaware of.
Greetings to everyone at the World Preservation Foundation. Thank you so much for having me, and I apologize for not being able to be there in person. According to the Director General of the World Health Organization, the three greatest threats facing humanity are the global food crisis, climate change, and pandemic influenza. Why is there so much concern about the so-called swine flu? Because apparently the last time an entirely new flu virus jumped species and triggered a pandemic, it went on to become the deadliest plague in human history, the influenza pandemic of 1918. Now, most flu strains tend to spare young, healthy adults, but the 1918 virus killed people in the prime of life. In 1918, more than a quarter of all people fell ill. In 1918, between 50 to 100 million people lost their lives. A similar pandemic today could kill many more. What started for millions around the globe as muscle aches and a fever ended days or even hours later with many people bleeding from their eyes, nose, mouth, ears. Homeless orphans, their parents dead, wandered the empty streets. Well, the conventional wisdom is that the 1918 pandemic was triggered when an H1N1 bird virus in its entirety, all 8 gene segments, jumped into human beings. We then apparently passed it along to pigs, sickening millions of them as well. After the pandemic, after our human immune systems became used to the new virus, it turned into the regular seasonal flu, and in pigs it turned into what's called classical swine flu. Before 1918, there were no reports of pigs getting the flu at all. People got the regular flu every year, and pigs got swine flu, same with the 30s and same with the 40s. But swine flu was stable throughout. But by 1999, everything changed. A never-before-described triple-species reassortment flu virus arose. The classical swine flu virus, after being stable for 80 years straight, picked up 3 gene segments from a circulating human flu virus and then 2 gene segments from a bird flu virus to create the first triple animal reassortment flu virus ever described. Our first hybrid, a human pig viral mutant, was discovered on an industrial pig production operation in Newton Grove, North Carolina. The virus mutated further and then spread within months throughout the United States. We then exported it to Asia, and then the favor was apparently returned. After reshuffling with the classic swine flu virus, our made in the USA triple reassortment virus picked up 2 gene segments from a Eurasian swine flu strain to create the flu pandemic of 2009. The main ancestor of the pandemic flu virus, shown in orange, is the triple hybrid mutant that emerged and spread throughout so-called factory farms. So after 8 decades of stability, what happened in the 1990s that led to these unprecedented changes in swine flu? Now, in poultry, outbreaks of highly pathogenic, highly disease-causing avian influenza in the first few years of this century has already exceeded the total number of outbreaks recorded for the entire previous century. As one leading flu expert told Science, we've gone from a few snowflakes to an avalanche. What's been happening in recent years to trigger this kind of evolution and fast forward for both the swine and chicken flu viruses? Well, One can ask the world's leading expert, Dr. Robert Webster. He says, now we have millions of chickens in chicken factories next to pig factories. And this virus has the opportunity to get into one of these chicken factories and make billions and billions of mutations continuously. So what we've changed is the way we raise animals. 6 years ago, the world's 3 leading authorities got together for a joint consultation. The World Health Organization, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and the World Organization for Animal Health, the world's leading veterinary authority. Their job was to uncover the key underlying causes of these emerging animal to human diseases. Number 1 on their list of themes of risk factors was the increasing demand for animal protein the world over. The United Nations has urged that all governments, local authorities, international agencies need to take a greatly increased role in combating the role of factory farming, which provides ideal conditions for the flu virus to spread and mutate into a more dangerous form. More than 5 years ago, the American Public Health Association, the largest association of public health professionals in the world, called for a moratorium on these confined animal feeding operations, these factory farms. In 2007, the Journal of the APHA, the American Public Health Association, published an editorial that went beyond just calling for a de-intensification of animal agriculture, the pork and poultry industries. It's curious, the editorial goes, that changing the way humans treat animals, most basically ceasing to eat them, or at the very least radically limiting the quantity of them that is eaten, is largely off the radar as a significant preventive measure. Such a change, however, if sufficiently adopted or imposed, could still reduce the risk of the much-feared influenza epidemic. Humanity does not even consider this option. The editorial concludes those who consume animals can not only harm those animals and endanger themselves, but may threaten the well-being of future generations. It's time for humans to remove their heads from the sand and recognize the risk to themselves that can arise from their maltreatment of other species. Now, how we treat animals can have these global public health implications. In this age of emerging diseases, there are now billions of feathered and curly-tailed test tubes for viruses to incubate and mutate within, billions more spins at pandemic roulette. But along with human culpability comes hope. If changes in human behavior can cause new plagues, well then changes in human behavior may prevent them in the future. Thank you.
The shift to a more plant-based diet, aside from being an environmental and government issue, is also a personal one. Increased public awareness and engagement facilitated by government and industry, together with initiatives such as Meat-Free Mondays, have shown that perceptions can change and win wide public participation. In the light of this, we're delighted to invite a guest speaker who's advocated the need for and the advantages of a plant-based diet for personal and planetary health for more than 2 decades. She's the inspiration behind the worldwide chain of vegan restaurants Loving Hut. In recent years, she's established an international television channel raising awareness about the urgent need to address climate change and promoting dietary change as an effective means to halt it. She's the recipient of many awards, including the 2006 Gussie Peace Prize, awarded for outstanding public service to mankind, and the World Spiritual Leadership Award in 1994. And in September this year, she was awarded a US Presidential Award. We'll now show via video a message from Supreme Master Ching Hai.
Hello. My highest salute and most respectful greeting to the divine within you. Your Excellencies, distinguished decision makers of the great United Kingdom, and welcome guests, courageous ladies and gentlemen. It is with deep honor that I join you in your respected company on this urgent meeting. As you are well aware, there are multiple global dangers facing our lives on Earth. Experts often highlight 6 major threats as the most pressing, urgent of our time, namely climate change, water shortage, food scarcity, deforestation, ocean collapse, and biodiversity loss. Although each threat on its own might cause enough damage to become a so-called civilization buster, their occurrence together would result in a global collapse, and all lives on the planet could be destroyed. Like many of you, I ask myself day and night how we can stop going in this calamitous direction. But I'm afraid the reality now is already too urgent. Scientists say that water security for about 80% of the world's people is threatened due to drying and polluted river systems, shrinking glaciers from South America to the Himalayas, and groundwater levels that fall lower and lower each year. In 2009, for the first time, the number of people suffering from hunger exceeded 1 billion. While disasters threaten the food security of many more. Each year, tropical forests the size of New York State are burned to the ground, releasing 17% of the world's total carbon dioxide emissions, more than all transportation combined. Over 70% of our fish species are fully depleted, and the rest could be gone within a few 10 years. A recent study by the United Nations found that plants and animals are now disappearing at up to 1,000 times the natural background rate of extinction, with vital life supporting ecosystems that could soon be irreversibly damaged. And you're right. Yeah, we have global warming. Even with strict greenhouse gas emission limits, the Earth's temperature is still expected to rise another 3.5 degrees Celsius within a few decades, which would result in the death of the Amazon rainforest, massive hurricanes smashing coastal cities, vast runaway release of methane from melting permafrost, and ultimately mass extinction. Already we see that disasters have become more frequent, prolonged, and deadlier. Thus, if these 6 factors are not stopped fast, we risk losing everything. I mean everything. So please consider what is really at stake now. What is really our foremost urgent priority at the present time is not just political reputation or economy. It's the lives, real lives of all inhabitants on Earth. Humans, animals, plants, trees, etc. Now, despite the overwhelmingly frightening situation at hand, esteemed researchers have identified one key cause of all these troubles. And there's even a solution to solve them. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, in 2006 stated that the livestock sector emerges as one of the top 2 or 3 most significant contributors to the most serious environmental problems at every scale from local to global, namely biodiversity loss, deforestation, land degradation, pollution, climate change, overfishing, and others. So it is not surprising that in June 2010, a report released by the United Nations Environment Programme and the European Commission concluded that a substantial reduction of environmental impacts would only be possible with a substantial worldwide change of diet, away from all animal products. Now let's check out one civilization buster at a time to see how each is driven by meat consumption. You may never look at a piece of meat in the same way again. First, climate change is a civilization buster, and its primary cause is livestock raising. I guess you know already. The UNFIO's 2006 report, Livestock Long Shadow, was followed by related research in 2009, which found that livestock and their byproducts account for at least 51% of human-caused greenhouse gas emissions. And I know that it is 80% or even more. Newer findings published by the US National Academy of Science and Germany's Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research also point to the livestock industry's huge impact on global warming. Furthermore, livestock production occupies a full 70% of all agricultural land and nearly 1/3 of all the planet's land surface. We have come to a point when climate scientists are now so extremely worried that they are even thinking of resorting to emergency ways to manipulate nature on a large scale through risky geoengineering. But if we simply return this land to nature again, like forest and grassland, then it would easily absorb a lot of emissions in the near future. Please also note that animal industry is the largest human-made source of methane and nitrous oxide, which are the greenhouse gases that are 72 times and 300 times more potent, respectively, than CO2. And methane, though being much worse than carbon dioxide, but disappears many times faster, in about 12 years, as opposed to centuries for CO2. Therefore, eliminating livestock production would cool the planet quickly, which is needed urgently if we think about the climate tipping point that are getting near. Moreover, as the Rhode Island Institute in the USA determined, if the world tillable land were organically cultivated, then 40% of the atmospheric CO2 would automatically be absorbed by the soil. Also, one German study found that an organic vegan diet could reduce overall dietary greenhouse gas emissions up to 94%. Wow, huh? Think about that. Now, to briefly mention about financial costs. Dutch scientists have calculated that the powerful dietary change to the healthy vegan diet would not only dramatically reduce global warming, it would also save 80% in climate mitigation costs by 2050. Second, water scarcity. Besides being a major water polluter, livestock consumes vast amounts of this precious resource, with as much as 200,000 liters required for each kilogram of beef, whereas only a tiny fraction of that, or 2,000 liters, is needed per kilogram of soya beans, for example. Put another way, eating 4 hamburgers costs a person the water equivalent of a year's daily showers. Wow, think of that again, huh? And while 1.1 billion people don't have access to safe water, including 6,000 children who die every day from drinking polluted water. And that is on our conscience. Ne? Some 1 trillion cubic meters of clean water is wasted on raising livestock. Are we really robbing our children of precious resources, such as water, for merely a poisonous, disease-laden, disease-causing, but easily replaced piece of meat? I'm sure you all agree, ladies and gentlemen, this is not acceptable. Third, food crisis. To meet the needs of a growing population, more and more scientists and other experts are affirming the logic and efficiency of reducing livestock so that food can be delivered to people directly. But today, livestock are bred and fattened on nearly half of the world's grain supply, while almost 11 million children who mostly live in those countries where these feed grains are grown, die, ironically, of hunger each year. On the other hand, directly supplied grain could easily feed more than the entire world's population. Fourth, deforestation. Lord Stern of Brentford, United Kingdom, lead author of the Stern Review on the Economics of Climate Change, proposed the avoidance of deforestation as the most economic method of managing greenhouse gas emissions. Well, 91% of the cleared Amazonian rainforest since 1970, the lungs of our Earth, can be directly or indirectly attributed to cattle raising. And in fact, the UNFAO stated that the livestock sector is the major driver of global deforestation. Fifth, world ocean collapse. The main cause here again is animal products. The United Nations recently reported that continued fishing could deplete the oceans of all marine stock within just a few decades. But the problem is not only fish consumption, the problem is also meat consumption. Because as much as 50% of the fish killed each year, or tens of millions of tons of marine lives, are fed to livestock, not human. Pigs and chickens consume 6 times more the amount of seafood than the entire American population, and twice as much as the whole Japanese. Think about that, huh? So if we stop all animal products, fish, egg, meat, and dairy, we will save the oceans, save the climate, and as we find out next, we could halt also biodiversity loss. Sixth, of course, biodiversity loss. The livestock industry is the leading cause of an alarming decline in wild species. In a new October 2010 study, Dutch researchers found that protecting natural areas is not sufficient to stop these fast extinctions of flora and fauna. Rather, one of the most effective policies is changing to a no-animal diet, meaning plant-based food. Now, some of us might question, can our world really eliminate the global meat industry and become all vegan? The facts tell us, yes, we can. And our humanity's survival instinct tells us we must. As the respected U.S. economist Jeremy Rifkin wrote in 2002, the world's wealthier consumers favor eating at the highest point on the global food chain, while their fellow human beings starve. We are long overdue for a global discussion on how best to promote a diversified, high-protein vegan diet for the human race. Former U.S. Vice President Al Gore and NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies Director Dr. James Hansen both referred to eliminating meat as the single most effective thing we can do to reduce our carbon footprint. Climate Chief Lord Stern likewise publicly stated that a vegetarian diet is better. Former World Bank advisor Dr. Goodland called the improved diet the overlooked climate solution. And Dr. Rajendra Pachauri, chair of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, said, a major shift toward plant-based diets is imperative if we are to have even a chance of preventing catastrophe. In terms of immediacy of action, reducing meat consumption clearly is the most attractive opportunity. Truly, the new opportunities for the food industry, consumers, and governments are bright. There are many stories of success from people who joined the vegan food industry, as well as farmers who switch from livestock raising to organic vegan farming. Research also tells us that plant-based alternatives to animal products are not only healthy, they use less fossil fuel energy, create more sustainable jobs, and are growing in popularity because of their quality, which also includes good taste. We all love good taste, don't we? Analysts also say that meat and dairy prices are set to rise steeply due to high climate risks, peak oil, and extreme environmental costs, while the livestock industry, which is heavily dependent on subsidies to survive already, is becoming obsolete. And we know that animal industry workers even suffer also some of the worst physical, emotional, psychological, and mental conditions now. It's high time that we advance to better ways as a society, a nobler way as a society. And governments could use their subsidies for people greatest benefit by supporting the earth-saving organic vegan farming practices and promoting a healthy, sustainable, resource-efficient food industry. The way we are going with our consumption rate, the World Wildlife Fund researchers said that we would need a second planet. If world governments stop supporting livestock and fishing and instead wisely support organic vegan food production, they will save 4/5 of climate mitigation costs, save a lot of water pollution costs, and save health costs of about $1 trillion due to meat-related diseases like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, food poisoning, etc., etc., to name a few. Now we can prevent more than 20 million meat-related deaths worldwide per year if we turn to the vegan diet. No more suffering for loved ones, no more early separation, no more anguish for ourselves and others. And we will enjoy naturally longer, healthier, lovelier, and happier lives. Even without the civilization busters threatening our planet's survival, an organic vegan diet would immensely improve the quality of our lives, spiritually also. It can curb the water and food crisis and restore nature's life support systems. It also happens to be the most rapid, cost-effective, and the only feasible climate solution, one that every nation can easily implement. In sum, only with the organic vegan solution can we still save our planet. Respected and honorable ladies and gentlemen, I beseech you and all the leaders to please help our world. Please save our planet. I would like very much to not lose my hope and everyone else's hope. Because humans are caring, are clever, are courageous, and are the children of God. I can only add my heartfelt prayers to yours, that together we will do everything possible and truly effective to save our planet for our children's sake. Thank you so much for your trust and attentive spirit. Wishing you forever wise, loving, and blessed by the divine. Love, love.
European Parliament supports reducing meat to lower greenhouse gases.
Roll call vote. Vote is now open.
Reduce your meat consumption or stop eating meat totally.
During discussions on greenhouse gas reduction goals, the Climate Committee of the European Parliament officially recognized livestock's contribution to global warming and recommended a reduction of subsidies to the livestock industry to curb methane.
The European Parliament has adopted its own position on climate change as an institution. And as a Vice President, one of the proposals I have made is in line with your own, which is that we should eat far less meat, because that's one of the major sources of greenhouse gases.
Please eat less meat, and let's make taxes on meat. That's definitely one of the issues we're talking about. I'd like to tell people what the cost is of eating meat for the environment worldwide.
My name is Jens Holm. I'm a member of the European Parliament. Please, be veg, go green to save the planet.
Lisa Bloom is a prominent civil rights attorney and founder of the Bloom firm based in Los Angeles. She's also an award-winning CNN and CBS TV news legal analyst, a lifelong vegetarian and a committed vegan. Ms. Bloom has recently finished her book, How to Stay Smart in a Dumbed-Down World, a wake-up call to put aside modern life distractions and focus on meaningful issues like climate change. And we have a chance to share some of her thoughts and wisdom there. Thank you.
Good afternoon to the World Preservation Foundation and Dodds for having the wisdom and the courage to put on this convention today. It is just so important. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. A generation ago, a hardy band of activists dared to speak the truth about the dangers of cigarette smoking. Naysayers said to them, "This will never work. You cannot take on big tobacco. It's a multi-billion-pound, even back then, global industry. It's a vital economic engine in many countries." But these brave souls believed that speaking the truth about a toxic industry mattered, so they soldiered on. Today, smoking worldwide is significantly down. Many cities ban smoking in public places, and the tobacco industry is a shadow of its former self, and people are living healthier lives as a result. The time is now to take on another massive global industry that is destroying us. The large-scale breeding, confinement, slaughter, and consumption of animals is intensely cruel to billions of animals who experience constant fear, pain, and suffering, often spending their entire brief, hormone-stuffed, bloated lives in crates so small they can never turn around, standing in their own feces day after day, their beaks or ears or tails hacked, or burned without anesthesia. Their young ripped away at birth, and in the case of hens, their male chicks ground to death alive as an industry standard practice. Don't be fooled. Even free-range eggs come from these conditions. If you believe in karma, you might believe that the human health costs from the animal industry was nature's way at striking back at us for this cruelty. And indeed, we've known for some time that meat and dairy products cause human obesity, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, and cancer, all fatal diseases that have skyrocketed in the last half century, along with our meat and dairy consumption. But in the US, at least, the majority of our kids are overweight or obese. At this rate, it's estimated that 1 in 3 Americans will have diabetes in a generation. And everywhere that our Western diet takes hold, sadly, our Western diseases follow. If you believe in karma, you might say that as we are still ignoring nature's message, nature appears to have upped the ante. Because we now know to a scientific certainty that animal production, confinement, and slaughter is destroying our Earth. How is it possible that climate change is still considered a debatable issue, one on which reasonable minds may differ, when the greatest convergence of top scientific minds in human history, the IPCC, has convened 4 times and told us in the clearest possible terms that climate change is real, it is upon us, and it is human-caused, and it is shaping up to be the worst humanitarian and ecological disaster in human history? To those who still doubt, I ask you, is the Nobel Prize granted to the IPCC insufficient to you? How about the over 100 world governments who independently endorsed the IPCC's findings, including those with the most to lose, like my government, the US, or Saudi Arabia, or China? To my American neighbors, the majority of whom do not believe in climate change, is it not enough for you that not only Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton know that climate change is real, it is upon us, and it is human-caused, but also Senator John McCain and former President George W. Bush? Do you choose to disbelieve our own space agency, NASA, which posts photos, videos, charts, and graphs sounding the alarm about rising temperatures, melting ice caps, and extreme weather caused daily by climate change? Not believing in climate change is no longer an option. One may as well not believe in gravity, not believe the Earth is ground, or not believe in science. And we now know that the animal industry causes more greenhouse gas than any other, including the transportation sector. We know that the raising of cows and pigs and chickens requires large-scale deforestation, and that 1/3 of the world's landmass has been bulldozed for pastures and factory farming. Without all the trees that once absorbed CO2, greenhouse gases are released back into the atmosphere. And what comes out of the animals themselves is toxic. From the 8 million tons of CO2 the animals exhale to the nitrous oxide and methane gas emitted from the animals' manure and from the animals themselves. Well, we've heard from the scientists. I'm not a scientist, I'm a citizen. But as a lifelong vegetarian, I have quietly enjoyed the good health and enormous energy of my plant-based diet for 3 decades. But I can remain quiet no longer. Diet can no longer be a matter of private choice when the choice to buy meat and dairy products causes unspeakable cruelty to sentient beings, and when the choice is destroying our planet. Governments must stop subsidizing this toxic industry and must instead subsidize organic plant-based farming, which consumes far less energy and feeds far more people. And we, as citizens, each and every one of us, must prod our leaders to act by boldly speaking the truth. Each of us must shout from the rooftops. We must post on Facebook. We must blog, tweet. We must tell our families and friends that we are reducing our meat and dairy consumption right now, and we must explain why, over and over again, if necessary. Look, I'm not predisposed to be an activist on this issue. My issues are civil rights, the education of third world girls, and animal cruelty. But preserving a livable planet must take precedence over everything else. So I talk about it. I even wrote a book about this issue, Think, How to Stay Smart in a Dumbed-Down World, to wake us up to the importance of thinking deeply about what matters. I took on my own industry, the media, for our ridiculous focus on drunken celebrities and plastic surgery, to the exclusion of pressing matters like genocide, war, and climate change. And at every meal, when people ask me, as they inevitably do, why I'm vegan, I explain the climate change connection and give them a taste of my roasted butternut squash pizza or my black bean guacamole tacos. And next time you meet up with your friends, do it at your local vegan restaurant. You might be surprised at how much everyone likes it. Have you tried those vegan cupcakes? Because, my friends, not only is vegan food the healthiest gift you can give your body, not only does it allow you to look in animals' eyes with compassion and without shame, vegan food is freaking delicious. Because concern about climate change is not just for the scientists and the politicians. The planet belongs to all of us. I, for one, refuse to stand idly by as extreme weather is already plaguing us, as animals go extinct, as 100 million refugees are predicted for my children's generation. Beef vegan on meatless Mondays. Beef vegan tonight for dinner. Beef vegan tomorrow just for one day, or for the month of November, or for the rest of your life. Be a stubborn advocate for our planet and tell everyone why you're doing it. Raise consciousness, send web links, bake vegan cupcakes, force mainstream environmental groups to grapple with this core issue. We can do it if we speak the truth and we live the courage of our convictions, just as generations before us have done on other seemingly insurmountable issues. Join me in this cause at think.tv online, or follow me on Twitter and Facebook, and together we can form a movement to restore balance to our Earth. Thank you.
Now, thanks very much. Picking up on just what's been said, whilst many changes can begin with the individual, the citizen, and the power of the people, and it's great, government leadership to help facilitate positive change which benefits the people of our world is of great importance.
So focusing on short-lived greenhouse gases like methane and black carbon, which were suggested earlier on, do you believe that a shift towards more of a plant-based diet would help to ensure this in a quicker way?
From what was said in the presentations, it is quite clear that once we can move towards that focus, we certainly would be able to see the benefit we're looking for in a much shorter time frame. And for us in the Caribbean, certainly, if we can move away from the meat-based or animal-based consumption to a greater consumption of vegetables that we will be able to grow rather than having them imported in, certainly we will see a more rapid benefit to the quality of life and also to the negative effect of climate changes.
It was a beautiful message from Supreme Master Cheng Hai, because what she did was she broke it down, all of the 6 major problems that our planet is facing, and how the number one cause of each of them is livestock production, or I choose to call it animal production. Animal production is clearly causing so many problems for the planet right now. Supreme Master put all of that together for people to understand and to see it as all part of the whole. And I thought that was tremendously important. And the videos were terrific. It brought together the science in a way that was very compelling.
It's clear that nowadays the greatest part of the deforestation by mass burning in South America comes from the expansion of the cash crops and cattle farming. The important thing that I think that is we must examine our values, the scale of values that we have about our experience in this planet. If you don't change that, if you don't think in different ways about consumption, of producing energy, first, we're not going to control this kind of global pollution. Second, is becoming day by day more socially unfair, where a small part of the population consumes too much and the great part doesn't consume it, and at the same time suffers the consequence of global climatic change.
it was such a beautiful conference to attend, and a lot of facts and figures that was provided to us, and it reiterated the importance of us as individuals, as companies, as politicians, to go and look at these viable solutions, especially the most efficient way being a vegan-based diet, which has the most amount of impact. There's been many benefits. There's the physical benefits and, of course, the spiritual benefits that come with following a vegetarian diet. And the expanding of understanding and realizing the importance of things is quite another benefit to it too. There's many facets and aspects to it, and anybody who's become a vegetarian, over time the benefits come out more and more. It might start at the physical level, but then it grows and blooms like a flower on other levels too.